A silent battle is taking place inside millions of people every day, and most of the world never notices it. Some people walk into a room and instantly feel the tension. They can sense sadness behind a smile. They absorb emotions that do not even belong to them. They carry the weight of other people's pain without realizing it. These people are known as empaths. Yet, there is a question that has puzzled many for years. Why do the kindest people often experience the deepest wounds? Why do those who give the most love frequently find themselves surrounded by disappointment, betrayal, and emotional exhaustion? Why does life seem to place its heaviest burdens on the shoulders of those who already carry so much? The answer is far deeper than most people realize. What looks like bad luck is often part of a hidden process. What feels like punishment may actually be preparation. What appears to be endless suffering may be shaping a strength that cannot be developed any other way. Many empaths spend years believing there is something wrong with them. They wonder why relationships leave them drained. They question why they attract people who take far more than they give. They struggle to understand why they can feel the emotions of others so intensely, while receiving very little understanding in return. The pain becomes so familiar that it starts to feel normal. But beneath every difficult experience, a lesson that most empaths do not see until much later. The heartbreak was teaching discernment. The rejection was teaching self-worth. The loneliness was teaching independence. The betrayal was teaching boundaries. And every challenge was quietly pushing them toward a version of themselves they had not yet discovered. What makes this journey even more fascinating is that many experts who study highly sensitive individuals have noticed patterns that appear again and again. Empaths often develop extraordinary emotional awareness because of the very struggles they endure. Many learn to read people with remarkable accuracy. Many become highly intuitive after years of navigating emotional chaos. Some even develop a level of self-awareness that most people spend a lifetime searching for. Yet these gifts rarely appear at the beginning of the journey. They emerge after the difficult seasons. They emerge after the moments that feel unbearable. This is one of the lesser-known truths about empaths. Their greatest strengths are often hidden inside their greatest pain. The experiences that nearly break them become the same experiences that transform them. And while the world often celebrates confidence, power, and success, it rarely talks about the emotional battles that create those qualities. It rarely talks about the silent struggles that shape resilient souls. It rarely talks about the inner fires that forge wisdom. That is why so many empaths feel alone. They are living through a process they do not fully understand. Throughout history, some of the most compassionate, insightful, and influential people endured intense emotional hardship before stepping into their purpose. Their struggles forced them to confront fears, wounds, and patterns that most people spend their lives avoiding. The same pattern appears repeatedly in the lives of empaths today. Before they discover their strength, they often find themselves walking through confusion. Before they trust themselves, they often experience betrayal. Before they understand their value, they often give it away too freely. And before they learn how powerful they truly are, life has a way of exposing every weakness they need to overcome. This can feel cruel when it is happening. It can feel unfair. It can feel like the universe has singled them out for suffering. Yet many empaths eventually look back and realize that their hardest moments contained their most important lessons. The events they once wished had never happened became the very experiences that awakened them. In this video, you will discover why empaths seem to face challenges that other people do not fully understand. You will learn why toxic individuals are often drawn toward empathetic people, and why this pattern repeats itself so often. You will uncover the hidden psychological and emotional dynamics that keep many empaths trapped in cycles of pain. You will learn about the breaking point that changes everything, and why many empaths go through a period of emotional darkness before finding clarity. You will also discover one of the most misunderstood truths about sensitivity. It is not weakness. In many cases, it becomes a source of extraordinary strength once it is properly understood and protected. We will explore how suffering can become a catalyst for transformation, why boundaries are essential for every empath, and how some people emerge from emotional hardship stronger, wiser, and more powerful than they ever thought possible. Most importantly, You will learn why the very qualities that made life difficult may also be the qualities that allow you to thrive. Stay with me until the end, because the final lesson may completely change the way you view your past struggles. Many people spend years asking why painful experiences happen to them. Few discover what those experiences were actually trying to teach them. The answer has the power to transform regret into wisdom and pain into purpose. What you are about to hear may help you understand yourself, your relationships, and your life in a way that finally makes sense. There is a reason certain patterns keep appearing. There is a reason certain lessons keep repeating. And there is a reason many empaths feel different from the people around them. By the end of this video, you may see that your journey has been leading somewhere important all along. So take a moment to settle in, open your mind, and prepare to see the empath experience from a completely different perspective. What looks like a curse may actually be a hidden gift. What feels like endless struggle may actually be a path toward personal power. And what seems like emotional chaos today may be preparing you for a level of strength you cannot yet see. Welcome to Neuromotivation Lab, where we explore the deeper truths about the mind, personal growth, and human potential. If you enjoy this kind of content and want more videos that help you understand yourself and unlock your inner strength, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join our growing community. Now, let us begin the journey and uncover why empaths are often born to walk through hell before they finally discover their power. A person does not become an empath overnight. In many cases, the signs appear very early in life, long before they even understand what makes them different. While other children focus only on their own feelings, the empath often becomes aware of the emotions of everyone around them. They notice tension in a room before anyone says a word. They sense sadness behind a smile. They feel discomfort when others are arguing, even if nobody directly involves them. It is as if their emotional radar is always turned on. This deep sensitivity is not something they choose. It simply becomes part of how they experience the world. Many empaths grow up feeling different without knowing why. They cannot explain why crowded places drain them. They cannot explain why certain people make them feel uncomfortable. They cannot explain why they often feel emotions that do not seem to belong to them. Because they lack the words to describe these experiences, they often assume everyone feels the same way. It may take years before they realize that their emotional awareness operates on an entirely different level. As children, empaths frequently become emotional observers. They pay close attention to the moods of parents, siblings, teachers, and friends. If someone is upset, they notice. If someone is struggling, they feel it. If there is tension in the home, they absorb it. This creates a unique challenge because children are not emotionally equipped to carry the burdens of adults. Yet many empaths do exactly that. They begin monitoring the emotional environment around them. They become peacekeepers. They try to prevent conflict. They try to make others happy. They learn to adjust their own behavior to keep everyone else comfortable. Over time, this becomes automatic. They stop asking what they need and start focusing on what everyone else needs. They become experts at reading others while becoming disconnected from themselves. One of the lesser-known realities about empaths is that many develop an unusually strong sense of responsibility at a very young age. They often feel responsible for emotions that were never theirs to carry. If a parent is stressed, the empath may feel responsible for helping. If someone is angry, they may blame themselves. If there is sadness in the household, they may try to fix it. This creates a pattern that can last for decades. The empath begins believing that their value comes from being useful. Their worth becomes connected to helping others. Their identity becomes connected to solving problems. Instead of feeling loved simply for being themselves, they often feel loved for what they can do for others. As they grow older, this pattern becomes stronger. Teachers may describe them as caring. Friends may describe them as understanding. Family members may describe them as dependable. These qualities seem positive on the surface, and many of them are. Compassion is a beautiful trait. Kindness is valuable. Empathy allows people to connect deeply with others. But when these qualities are not balanced with healthy boundaries, they can create serious problems. The empath begins giving more than they receive. They become the person everyone leans on. They listen to everyone's problems. They support everyone during difficult times. They offer comfort, encouragement, and understanding. Yet when they need support themselves, they often struggle to ask for it. They have become so focused on caring for others that they no longer know how to care for themselves. This deep sensitivity also affects the way empaths experience the world. They notice details that others overlook. They pick up on subtle changes in tone. They recognize emotional shifts before they become obvious. Sometimes they sense dishonesty without having concrete proof. Sometimes they feel uneasy around certain people, even when everyone else seems comfortable. Their intuition becomes one of their strongest gifts, but it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many empaths spend years doubting their instincts because they cannot logically explain what they feel. They ignore their inner voice. They convince themselves they are overthinking. They give people the benefit of the doubt. Later, they often discover that their original instincts were correct all along. This natural ability to see beneath the surface creates another challenge. Empaths rarely judge people based on their mistakes alone. Instead, they look deeper. They see pain behind anger. They see fear behind arrogance. They see wounds behind destructive behavior. While others focus on what a person is doing, empaths often focus on why that person is doing it. This makes them incredibly compassionate, but it can also make them vulnerable. Because they understand people's pain, they sometimes excuse behavior that should not be tolerated. Because they see potential, they ignore reality. Because they focus on what someone could become, they overlook who that person is right now. This pattern becomes especially noticeable in relationships. Empaths naturally believe in growth. They believe people can change. They believe everyone deserves understanding. These beliefs come from a good place. They reflect genuine compassion. But compassion without wisdom can become dangerous. The empath sees a wounded person and wants to help. They see someone struggling and want to support them. They see someone's potential and become emotionally invested in that future version. What they often fail to realize is that potential is not reality. A person's future possibilities do not erase their present behavior. Because of this, many empaths find themselves drawn into painful relationships. They meet someone who is emotionally unavailable, and they convince themselves that enough love will change them. They meet someone who has unresolved trauma, and they take on the role of healer. They encounter someone with destructive habits, and they believe patience will solve the problem. Again and again, they give second chances. Again and again, they overlook warning signs. Again and again, they tell themselves that things will improve if they just try harder. Meanwhile, certain types of people are naturally attracted to empaths. This attraction is not always intentional. Sometimes it happens unconsciously. Wounded individuals are often drawn toward those who provide understanding. Manipulative individuals are often drawn toward those who struggle to say no. Emotionally immature individuals are often drawn toward those who are willing to carry responsibility for the relationship. The empath offers exactly what many people desperately want: attention, compassion, forgiveness, patience, emotional support, acceptance. At first, this dynamic may seem beautiful. The empath feels needed. The other person feels understood. Everything appears balanced. But over time, the relationship begins to shift. The empath keeps giving. The other person keeps taking. The empath keeps understanding. The other person keeps making excuses. The empath keeps sacrificing. The other person keeps demanding more. Slowly, the relationship becomes one-sided. The empath's needs disappear into the background. Their energy becomes depleted. Their emotional resources become exhausted. One of the most painful lessons many empaths must learn is that helping someone is not the same as saving them. No amount of love can force another person to grow. No amount of sacrifice can heal wounds that someone refuses to address. No amount of patience can replace personal responsibility. Yet many empaths spend years trying to accomplish exactly that. They believe that if they love hard enough, support deeply enough, and remain loyal long enough, they can change someone else's life. Eventually, reality catches up with them. The relationship that seemed full of promise becomes a source of pain. The person they tried to help continues making the same choices. The problems continue repeating. The emotional burden becomes heavier. The empath begins feeling trapped between compassion and self-preservation. Part of them wants to leave. Another part feels guilty for even considering it. This inner conflict creates tremendous emotional exhaustion. Day after day, the empath invests energy into situations that produce little change. They continue hoping. They continue believing. They continue waiting for transformation that never arrives. What makes this especially difficult is that empaths often see glimpses of the person's potential. They witness moments of kindness. They see flashes of growth. They experience brief periods when everything seems to improve. These moments keep their hope alive. They convince themselves that change is just around the corner. But eventually, there comes a breaking point. For some, it arrives through betrayal. For others, it arrives through heartbreak. Sometimes it arrives through years of emotional exhaustion that slowly drain every ounce of energy they have left. The specific event may differ, but the experience feels remarkably similar. The empath reaches a moment where they can no longer continue living the way they have been living. The strategies that once worked stop working. The sacrifices stop making sense. The endless giving becomes unbearable. This period often feels like everything is falling apart. Relationships end. Friendships change. Long-held beliefs begin to crumble. The empath feels lost. They question themselves. They question their decisions. They question their purpose. The emotional pain can be overwhelming because it forces them to confront truths they have spent years avoiding. They realize that some people never intended to change. They realize that some relationships survived only because of their effort. They realize that their kindness has sometimes been used against them. For the first time, they begin asking difficult questions. Why do I keep attracting these situations? Why do I struggle to walk away? Why do I feel responsible for everyone else's happiness? Why do I keep abandoning my own needs? These questions mark the beginning of a profound transformation. At first, the answers are uncomfortable. They reveal patterns the empath never wanted to see. They reveal people-pleasing tendencies. They reveal fear of rejection. They reveal a deep need for approval. They reveal fears surrounding loneliness and abandonment. These realizations can feel devastating because they challenge the identity the empath has built for years. The empath starts recognizing that many of their actions were not driven solely by compassion. Some were driven by fear. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of conflict. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being alone. This awareness hurts because it forces them to examine parts of themselves they previously ignored. Yet this pain serves a purpose. The suffering begins exposing unhealthy patterns that could never be healed while remaining hidden. The heartbreak creates awareness. The disappointment creates clarity. The exhaustion creates honesty. The empath finally sees that kindness without boundaries is not healthy. Giving without limits is not noble. Constant self-sacrifice is not love. Little by little, their perspective begins changing. They start understanding that self-respect matters. They start recognizing the importance of boundaries. They begin learning that protecting their energy is not selfish, it is necessary. For perhaps the first time in their lives, they start considering their own needs alongside the needs of others. This shift changes everything. The empath learns to say no. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Guilt appears immediately. Old habits resist the change, but with practice, the word becomes easier. They begin stepping away from situations that drain them. They stop trying to rescue everyone. They stop accepting responsibility for problems they did not create. The energy they once poured into unhealthy relationships starts returning to them. Their confidence begins growing. Their intuition becomes clearer. Their emotional world becomes less chaotic. Instead of constantly reacting to the emotions of others, they begin listening to their own inner guidance. What once felt impossible slowly becomes natural. They stop chasing validation. They stop seeking approval. They stop measuring their worth by how much they can do for others. Instead, they begin building a relationship with themselves. They learn what peace feels like. They learn what healthy relationships look like. They learn that true compassion includes compassion for themselves. As this transformation continues, hidden gifts begin emerging. Their intuition becomes sharper than ever. Their emotional intelligence deepens. They recognize manipulation quickly. They notice warning signs early. Situations that once confused them become easy to understand. People who once intimidated them lose their power. The empath develops a quiet confidence that comes from experience rather than ego. Most importantly, they stop fearing solitude. For years, loneliness may have driven many of their decisions. They tolerated unhealthy situations because they feared being alone. Now they discover that peace is far more valuable than unhealthy companionship. They realize that solitude can be healing. They realize that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. The sensitivity that once felt like a burden begins revealing its true purpose. It was never meant to make them weak. It was meant to help them see what others overlook. It was meant to deepen their understanding. It was meant to strengthen their intuition. What once felt like a curse slowly reveals itself as a gift that has been misunderstood for most of their life. Yet not every empath reaches this stage. Some remain trapped in old patterns. Some continue blaming others without examining themselves. Some continue repeating the same relationships. Some continue rescuing people who do not want to be saved. Growth requires honesty. Growth requires self-awareness. Growth requires the willingness to confront painful truths. The empaths who transform are not necessarily stronger than everyone else. They simply become willing to face their wounds directly. They stop asking why life has been unfair. They stop focusing entirely on what happened to them. Instead, they begin asking a different question. They ask what each experience was trying to teach them. And the moment that question becomes more important than the pain itself, everything starts changing. As we come to the end of this journey, there is one truth worth remembering above all else. Being an empath was never meant to be easy. It was never meant to be a path filled with constant comfort, perfect relationships, or endless understanding from others. In many ways, the empath's journey is one of the most challenging paths a person can walk. Not because they are weak, but because they feel so deeply. They care deeply. They love deeply. They see the good in people even when others cannot. And because of that, they often experience lessons that cut straight to the heart. But now you can see the bigger picture. The betrayals were not random. The disappointments were not pointless. The loneliness was not permanent. The heartbreak was not the end of your story. Every painful chapter was shaping you in ways you could not see at the time. Every setback was teaching a lesson. Every wound was revealing a truth. Every difficult person was showing you something you needed to learn about yourself. Life was not trying to break your spirit. It was trying to strengthen it. It was teaching you the difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. It was teaching you the difference between love and attachment. It was teaching you that caring for others should never come at the cost of abandoning yourself. For years, you may have searched for answers outside of yourself. You may have looked for validation, approval, acceptance, understanding. But the greatest lesson many empaths eventually discover is that the peace they were searching for was never outside of them. It was within them all along. The moment you stop giving your power away, everything begins to change. The moment you trust your intuition, everything begins to change. The moment you stop chasing people who cannot value you, everything begins to change. The moment you realize your worth does not depend on how much you sacrifice for others, everything begins to change. That is when the empath becomes truly powerful, not because they control others, not because they never feel pain again, but because they finally understand themselves. They know who they are. They know what they deserve. They know when to stay. They know when to walk away. And most importantly, they know that protecting their peace is not selfish. It is necessary. One day, you will look back at the battles that once felt impossible. The sleepless nights, the tears nobody saw, the relationships that broke your heart, the moments when you felt completely alone. And you will realize that those experiences were not signs that you were losing your way. They were signs that you were finding it. Because sometimes the fire is not there to destroy you. Sometimes the fire reveals who you were always meant to become. The empath who once doubted themselves becomes confident. The empath who once felt lost finds direction. The empath who once carried everyone else's burdens finally learns to carry themselves with strength, wisdom, and grace. And that is when the journey makes sense. That is when the pain becomes purpose. That is when the struggle becomes power. And that is when the empath finally understands that every step through hell was leading them toward the strongest version of themselves. If this message spoke to you, take a moment and let me know in the comments. I would love to hear which part of this journey connected with you the most. And if you found value in this video, please take a second to like it, because it helps this message reach more people who may need to hear it right now. Make sure to subscribe to Neuromotivation Lab and turn on notifications so you never miss our future videos on personal growth, mindset, emotional strength, and self-discovery. And if you know someone who is struggling, someone who gives too much, feels too deeply, or is trying to find their way through a difficult season of life, share this video with them. It might be the reminder they need today. Thank you for watching. Keep trusting your journey. Keep honoring your heart. Keep becoming who you were meant to be. And remember, your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your hidden strength. I will see you in the next video.